nothing happened for a second. And then all of a sudden, it was like a 2x4. Wham! Got hit right. I was like, holy jeez. And I'm like, and the whole truck and trailer surged forward.
Concrete's still liquid form when it's in there being hauled somewhere. The cement truck has to come into a hard brake. It'll spill concrete out the front.
Just know after you pass that DMV test, doesn't mean you're a professional haul tankers. The
learning is just beginning.
At the end of the day, the more endorsements you have, the more opportunities are going to open themselves up.
If you're thinking about a career in the trades and you want to know what employers actually look for, what the work is really like, and what nobody tells you before you get started, you're in the right place. Built in the Midwest features conversations that'll help you figure out if this path is for you.
Good morning, Billy.
Morning.
How are you doing this morning?
Fantastic.
Oh, terrific. Another beautiful day here in the Upper Peninsula.
Absolutely.
So I was just reading, all right, that school's going back in 3 weeks and our summer's almost over. So
yeah, it's been a quick one.
It's always a quick one. It's like you get like 2 months up here. 2 months of summer.
Kind of been a warm one.
It has. Yeah, no, we had that. We never see 100-degree weather, and we actually saw a couple of weeks of that, which was crazy. But which is actually kind of nice to see once in a while, because give it a few months and it's going to be -20, and we're going to be in the overalls and Carhartts, and
some of us thrive better in the cold.
That's true. That's why we love the North, right?
Absolutely.
It's cooler. It's just cooler. All across all aspects.
Yep.
All right. So today we want to talk about endorsements. It's something that we get questions a lot from students, from people. Should I get endorsements? What endorsements should I get? Which ones are most valuable? What are the testing requirements for those endorsements? And you've done a lot of different things kind of throughout the years. So I figured you'd be a great person to talk to on this. So first of all, let's kick it off. All right. So the endorsements that you can get, and I know I'm off the top of my head, but I am going to read them just to make sure I got the accurate stuff here. We have the T endorsement, which is your doubles, triples. The P endorsement, passenger vehicle, N tanker endorsement. H, the hazmat materials endorsement, better regarded as hazmat. The X endorsement, which is your tanker and your hazmat, and your S endorsement, which is your school bus. So let's start off right at the top here with the T endorsement. Doubles, triples. Yeah. Doubles, triples. Talk to me about that. And I know you and I both know several students that are doing.
Yep. And that's a good one to get depending on where you're going. But being in Michigan, heavy haul state, we pull a lot of trains. Heavy trains. Look at Cisco, pulls doubles. UPS pulls doubles. All depends on where you're going, what your plan is. I highly recommend getting that endorsement, because you never know where you're going to end up. You might be a new guy or coming out of school. You're going to go somewhere, get your experience. 5 years down the road, you might end up somewhere hauling gravel for a local company or wherever.
Absolutely. I think about it like doubles. I see doubles every single day, all over the place. Now, from a regulatory standpoint, Michigan, Wisconsin, and a lot of other states for that matter don't allow triples, right? Which we can talk about triples in a second here, but they allow doubles. And so you see a lot of whether it's K Graham. I know we have some students going for them, and those are B train double flatbeds. You look at if you ever get up in the Marquette area. You have MJ Van Dam up there. All right. Same thing, but different B-train double side dump trucks. Those are pretty popular. And then, of course, you look at UPS, FedEx, Reinhardt Foods, Cisco. That's just off the top of my head. There's a lot of doubles opportunities out there.
You see a lot of doubles come through town every day. North Fork out of Manistee runs doubles back and forth. Lime.
Yeah. So what would you say from a safety standpoint that you got to be more cognizant about hauling doubles?
Absolutely. Slow down, take your time, know how to load them properly. They have they get a nickname called the wiggle wagons.
Yeah, the wiggle wagons.
Yeah. Starts to get away, slow down, get it back under control. But a lot of times that's caused by improper load, fifth wheel wear. There's certain suspension wear can cause that. The biggest thing is loading that pup wrong, create that wiggle.
Sure, absolutely. I know one thing that we talk about is that rearward amplification, which simply means you make a small movement of your steering wheel. It could be just a few inches, but it amplifies all the way down to the back of the trailer, where that could be 2-3 feet. And another good example, so I was talking to one of my arborist friends about this, and when you put a wedge in a tree, even though that wedge might be just a half inch on the bottom of that tree, the top of that tree can move 5 feet.
Okay,
but same type of thing because of the length.
Length and
right?
leverage, yep.
So,
Okay.
That's one thing for individuals that are thinking about getting into it, that, you have to be defensive no matter what CMV you're driving. But you add, 1 or 2 or 3 trailers behind, you're going to have a lot more rear amplification, a lot more likely that you could roll over, taking corners too fast. And also, never to jerk that wheel or make an aggressive movement of your steering wheel. I like to tell a story to the students about when I was first training here at the school, and we're out in Perrinville, and we live in the UP, a lot of deer all over the place. And this deer comes out, and before I could say anything, the student jerks the wheel, right? And I'm leaning over, and I grab the steering wheel, and I bring it back onto the road, and the students are flopping around in the back, and I'm like, oh my goodness. I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, what'd you want me to do, hit the deer? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. And I'm like, because if we were fully loaded, and now you have all that top heaviness, we probably would end up rolling over in the ditch somewhere, and one of us could have been hurt and everything else. And so it was a good learning experience to him that, no, we never jerk that steering wheel. We never make an aggressive movement of our steering wheel, because it's not the truck you got to worry about, but it's that rearward amplification all the way back that could cause it to roll over and cause massive issues. So I tell that story to all the students, say, hey, if we encounter a deer, you know what I mean? Yeah, you can hit your brakes a little bit, slow down, but don't jerk that steering wheel, because you could lose control. And not to mention, when he jerked it, guess where he jerked it to? Oncoming traffic. He jerked into the left lane. Now, thank God there was no oncoming traffic coming, but I'm like, a real life situation. All right. And we're training on public roads. I mean, that could have been really dangerous. And so it's an aspect that we teach in our training. Like, don't jerk that steering wheel, and never, ever, jerk that steering wheel in oncoming traffic, because, because what you're saying there is that deer's life is more important than your own.
Or somebody else's.
Or somebody else's. Exactly. And it's like, absolutely not. And so, and honestly, being in the UP here, I love venison. So if a deer ever does come out, if we can aim for a headshot, I'll get the back straps, and the inner loins will be delicious. All right. Winter venison dinner.
Yes.
All right. Yes. We do love our venison up next neck of the woods. Just like those guys that came from Florida here. They love venison too. They said the deer are much smaller down there though. They're like dogs, right? They're just small. You don't get as much meat off them.
They still like them though.
Well, what he say is he's like, dang, they look like horses up here. And I was like, yeah, those are white-tailed deer, We got some good hunting up here. What can I say? And with triples now triples is another level. And I believe this is still a rule with LCV requirements, long combination vehicle requirements, that you need a minimum of 6 months of experience to be able to drive an LCV like triples. But the really only place I've seen them on a regular basis is like the Ohio-Pennsylvania turnpike.
Correct. That's where I've seen most of that travel.
Yeah. So it's not something. So triples. I've traveled all over the country, and Ohio, Pennsylvania turnpike. That's where I see them. So I wonder if there's something with that. But I know there are doubles all over the place. Doubles are very, very common. Good endorsement to have. But also it's important to know kind of that setup, what that looks like, because I know B train doubles is a lot different than A train doubles, depending on stability. You're talking about gravel trains, right? Those are really, really common, even how you back those up. There's a lot that goes into it. How do you back up doubles effectively?
Backing up a set of doubles, you got your pin lock your dolly. If you want to go, you got to throw away everything you know about backing up when you're backing up a set of doubles.
Yeah.
Because now if I want the rear trailer to go right, I turn right.
Because it's pivoting twice to get back there.
You got to go back, go slow, take your time. It takes a long time for somebody good to back up a set of doubles.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. You can do it.
absolutely, seat time,
Yeah.
hone your craft.
But you don't see that very often. You know, even with guys, I'm thinking of Levi, if he's listening. Shout out to Levi. How you doing? He's over at K Graham, and he hauls doubles all the time. A lot of steel coils and wood and different things. And I always see him pull in and pull out. He always has an exit. He never pulls into a place and has to, that I've seen, and has to back up. He always, looks far enough in advance where he can pull in and pull out. Because it's just, it makes your job easier, right? Why make your job harder?
That's something you have to do as a driver pulling a set of doubles like that, is prepare for my exit.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not going to pull in somewhere and all I got to try to back out of this situation.
Absolutely.
You're going to plan ahead, look ahead.
Absolutely. The other thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is you're so much longer too, right? So you have rear amplification, you have all these things going on that you got to be cognizant about, but also you're 80, 90 feet long. I mean, some of those B-train doubles are massive. And so, outage is a big one with like railroad tracks where, you're coming up to a traffic light, but there's a railroad track maybe a little bit before it. Do you have enough space to get your vehicle across, or is part of that truck or trailer going to be still on the railroad tracks? Right. And so understanding, kind of looking far in advance. And I think that's a good rule of thumb for all CDL drivers, that, you're not driving your personal vehicle.
You got to be well aware of your surroundings.
Absolutely. You got to be looking significantly further in front of you than you normally would, because you're a much bigger vehicle. You have a much bigger stopping distance. There's a lot more things going on in a CMV. But yeah, anything else with doubles?
We pretty covered that pretty well.
We're moving right along. All right, the passenger endorsement. So this one's kind of interesting, because every school bus is a passenger vehicle, but not every passenger vehicle is a school bus, which is interesting. So if we're thinking about just the P endorsement now, going back to doubles, triples real quick. So remember, that one's just a written test at your DMV. So DMV, BMV, DOT, Secretary of State, whatever your state calls it, because states like to be different that way. It's just a written test at the Secretary of State. And we'll put some links down below as well, because this school has some great online courses for this stuff too, if people are interested. But yes, just to, I believe it's like 30 questions. Test at the Secretary of State, the DMV, and you can get that endorsement on your CDL. P passenger is a little bit different. So passenger by definition is just any passenger vehicle that transports 16 or more passengers. So that would include all your, data buses and coach buses and school buses for that matter and everything. Where have you seen stuff like that? Just the P endorsement buses?
Just a P endorsement. Your Indian Trails bus lines.
Oh, yeah.
Things like that. People that tour buses.
It makes me think of, you ever travel on one of those Indian Trails buses? Yeah, the coach buses. It's an experience. I feel like, me, I'm all about the experiences, right? I like to really try everything once, right? Some people say that. No, I seek out those experiences. I will tell you, for people that don't have, good transportation, over long distances, they are great. But in my experience, a 6-hour trip will take you 16 hours, because you're like a pinball on the way, stopping at every single city, and then you're stopping, dropping people up, picking people up, and then eventually you get to your destination. And you have and you see all sorts of interesting people on those buses too. There really is. I made good friends with a couple of parolees that were just getting out of prison, right? Didn't have transportation, and we were BSing in the back of the bus, and we were just having oodles of fun, that. So I made some new friends out of it, honestly. I feel like I should do that again here. So if you need to make some new friends, I guess that's my advice.
Take a bus ride.
Take a bus ride, all right? When you're on a bus for 16 hours, you get to know someone pretty well.
Absolutely.
All right? There's no doubt about it. Oh, kind of interesting. But it makes me laugh. When I lived down in Lansing as well, they have the CATA buses down there. And so those are not just passenger buses, but those are Class A passenger buses, because they're articulating buses. And there's some of those drivers down there are terrible. Absolutely horrible. Like I was sick numerous times getting off those buses. Yes. So if anyone is listening, if you could back off on the throttle a little bit, little less. I mean, they would put you through the windshield. I'm not even kidding. Like
those in Detroit, I didn't realize that was considered a Class A.
Yeah, because it's an articulating Class A bus. So because it's like the second part of the bus is a trailer essentially. It's another bus that they're pulling, right? But what's interesting is a lot of those were all essentially like cab overs, like diesel pushers, and they make really tight turns, but they're going right into, Michigan State campus, right in downtown Lansing. I mean, they get some really tight areas there, but that's what I rode every single day. I mean, that's, places like that. It was faster to take that, the local bus like that than really drive a lot of places. Yeah, find somewhere to park, and I mean that was something. Especially living in the UP, I think we're kind of secluded to some of that stuff. I remember going out to Buffalo Wild Wings right in East Lansing, and I had to pay to park. I'm like, I'm going to your restaurant, and you're charging me to park, and so clearly I'm not as worldly as I thought I was. And the guy's like, yeah, it's pretty normal. Like, you want to go anywhere around here, you're going to pay to park, and it's like, okay.
So you'd probably be better off using public transit.
Well, yeah, exactly. So at that point, you just take the bus, and those buses are they stay out late, and but it's not like the bus around here where you call and they'll come pick you up. They have designated bus stops, designated bus routes, and I felt like I was back in grade school. We're waiting at a bus stop with 9 other people.
Potentially stand there for 20, 25 minutes waiting for the next bus.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, and sometimes, depending on the schedule, you would just miss it and you'd see it driving past. And I'm like, oh no. And so you'd have to wait another 30 minutes to the next bus comes around, or it could be longer, So yeah, kind of interesting. But to get the P endorsement, so if you wanted just the P endorsement, so that actually is a course in itself, because you have to take a skills test with that. You have to do all the ELDT with that, and you need to test in a passenger bus to be able to get that endorsement. So like most students that come through the schools program, they don't want the P and the S, because they don't plan on hauling passengers or kids or anything like that. But
can we break that down? So anything over 16 passengers, you could go to a data bus. Data bus is hydraulic brake, but going into like Indian Trails or Greyhound, I'm assuming have air brakes.
Because those are bigger buses. That's so true. So yeah, the P is not all created equally, so to say. So you could have the P endorsement, but not a Class B CDL with air brakes. Yeah, so it could be a hydraulic brake bus that just would require. So that'd be a Class C CDL, a Class C CDL. And then you can have the P and the S, because actually we've done Class C CDLs with the short buses, like the Head Start buses and different things, kind of like the buses my kids ride, And yeah, with hydraulic brakes, but it meets the P endorsement because it's 16 or more passengers, which pretty much every bus is. I mean, when you put 2 kids in a seat, it doesn't take long, right? 8 seats, you're there. And then if it's school bus yellow, which is interesting because that is the only vehicle on the road that's that color. Legally, it's the only vehicle allowed to be that color, is school buses, to be that school bus yellow. So not that I wanted to paint my truck yellow, but
but that's something that people need to think about if they're going to get their P endorsement or their S endorsement, to know what they're going to be driving to set themselves up for success.
Absolutely. Because if you're getting into you want to drive like a coach bus for like a motor coach for like Indian Trails is what's around here. So they travel around the Midwest and stuff. But whatever's in your local area, a big motor coach, chances are 95% it's going to be a Class B. It's going to be a Class B bus with air brakes, probably an automatic, and you're going to need that P endorsement as well. So you need to test in a bus like that. You can't test in a smaller bus and get that. You got to test in the bigger bus to get the bigger bus endorsement, so to say. So yeah, that's important. Or if you want to be like down in Lansing and other places where you have Class A passenger buses, you need to test in a Class A bus to be able to get that Class A, passenger endorsement. Yeah, kind of interesting. So there's a lot that goes into that. If people are interested in that, there is some good opportunities. I think about like the data bus here in town. I just noticed that they're actually hiring right now as well. Indian Trails Motor Coach Company was hiring. Even Go Right Way in Marinette, they were hiring too. So from a CDL perspective, those are some good opportunities for people as well. That maybe don't think about it. That's also a CDL.
It just made me think of something. Somebody just asked me a question the other day about a bus line, becoming a driver for a bus line. I got to remember that now.
All right, yeah. Yeah, well, who was it that's driving around celebrity like artists and stuff? I helped train them. And that was cool because I talked to him like a year later, and like he was driving around like Eric Church and Brad Paisley, and I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? And been all over the place. But he drives the tour bus and takes the band all over the United States to the different shows and different things.
That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So yeah, kind of interesting. So who knows where you could end up with stuff like that? But I think there is some opportunities there for sure.
And I think if I remember right, he had to get a Class A because they're pulling a trailer with that. That was over.
Yes, because he was pulling the trailer with all the band equipment in it. And because the trailer was over 10,000 pounds, it was a Class A bus. So I remember that. Yeah, so it was kind of a unique situation. Yeah, just when you think you've seen it all. Exactly. Oh, it keeps things interesting. Well, anything else with P? I think that takes care of the passenger endorsement. All right, moving on to tanker. So tanker, Bill's got a lot of experience in tanker, but with the tanker, that is just a written test down at the DMV. But I would argue that it kind of should be more, because there's a lot that goes into tanker, and you see a lot of crazy accidents with tankers. And I think about that rollover that just happened a few years ago up in Houghton with that fuel tanker. Talk about that side of it.
That's a big thing right there. And I believe you're right with the tanker endorsement. I believe there should be a little more training. And I hope when somebody gets hired on somewhere as a tanker driver, that the company does their due diligence to make sure that this driver is prepared for what can happen and understands what can happen and prepared for what's going to happen. Hauling milk, you're not baffled. So we talk about surge. We could talk about surge all day and the effects it can have. Now you're in a tanker. Your higher center of gravity, whether it be liquid tanker, dry bulk tanker, your center of gravity is higher. It's going to slow down more in the corners. Being aware of what you're doing all the time. Even hauling dry bulk, it's kind of a stable load, but it's not, because it's stable there, but a hard break or a hard turn, it can shift in that. On a hard turn, that dry bulk material moves in there, can cause you to flip over.
Wow. So people that get into it, it's like, know that it's just a 30 question test at the DMV, but just know there is a whole nother level of hazards that go into it. And, you were talking about unbaffled tankers. And I remember the one that I was, the first unbaffled tanker that I hauled, I was like maybe half or 3/4 full of sodium chloride, and didn't hit the brakes that hard, but like a normal brake. And nothing happened for a second. And then all of a sudden it was like a 2x4. Wham! Got hit right. I was like, holy jeez. And I'm like, and the whole truck and trailer surged forward. And then it hit the back and then went back a little bit and then surged forward again. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And you just felt it go back and forth. And so when people say do not hit the brakes hard with a tanker, where, what I like to call feather foot, nice and easy, because you get 8,000 gallons back there that's moving. It's crazy. And when it hits that front bulkhead, I mean, it's a shock, unlike anything I've seen.
Absolutely. We can talk about surge. A lot of people don't think of this. We run a lot of front load cement trucks around here. Concrete's still liquid form when it's in there being hauled somewhere. The cement truck has to come into a hard break. It'll spill concrete out the front.
Yeah. It'll literally spill it out
the front.
Out the front. Because that concrete is swirling in there and moving around.
So that's along the lines with the tanker. Slow down, pay attention. Plan ahead.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that, and I didn't realize where pretty much your only baffled tankers are going to be your hazmat. Because once you haul, fuel or propane or diesel or jet fuel or whatever, that's all you can haul in there. But there's a lot of tankers on the road that are unbaffled for the simple fact that they can clean them thoroughly in between. So they can haul milk one day, wine the next, calcium chloride the next, which is non-hazmat, water, whatever. There's a lot of non-hazmat chemicals that you can haul, food grade liquids. And so there's a lot of unbaffled tankers out there and what they call smooth bore. And you got to know that's totally different with how you drive it. And
whole nother boulder ride.
What I thought was interesting is when I was learning the tanker side of things was when you're fully loaded, in my mind initially was, you're going to feel the most back, forth, everything else. But
no. Half to 3/4 is where you're going to feel that the most.
Oh, yeah. Full, right? I take my water bottle here. If you're completely full and you try moving it around, that liquid can't move at all, right? There's not much space to move. But you're 3/4 like this or half. Well, now you have a ton of liquid in there, and then you have a ton of space, and now that liquid will literally do that in the back, but over 50 feet long. So
that's time to build momentum.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yep.
It's crazy. Speaking of, I would like to make the shout out to John there. You know that. So this water came from Crystal Falls, Michigan, right here in the Upper Peninsula, and actually, you were telling me. Talk to me about the test that this water's done, because it's delicious water. All right,
I don't know much about it. I'm just going off what I was told.
Yeah,
that it was second place in an international water tasting competition.
Second only.
Yeah.
To
Fiji.
To Fiji water. Wow. Yeah. That's it right here in the UP.
Yep.
So, anyway. Get it at Meyer. Check it out. It's delicious water. I tell you what. So thanks, John, for bringing in some cases for us. We really appreciate it. I don't think John listens to this, but if he does, it's good stuff. I'm a fan. But back to tanker. One of the other things that I think is important is the training on it, and actually not just hopping into a tanker and not knowing what you're doing. Right. I think that's really, really important, that even though it's just a test at the DMV to get your tanker endorsement, making sure you understand, because even the shutoff valves, and I've seen videos of tankers where people haven't opened up the cover on top and the tanker can suck itself in. I mean, there's some dangerous aspects to that.
Absolutely. Implosion, explosion.
Well, yeah, same thing. You're loading it and you don't have the valve open to release that air on the inside. I mean, there's
a lot there.
There's a lot there.
I hope that somebody gets into it. They pay attention when they're being trained, take their time, be fully aware of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So on top of like surge and slosh, which is simply that movement of liquid in a tanker, right? Which is a big one. You have side to side movement, front and back movement. But you're going significantly slower around turns and corners than you would a normal CMB, right? Because you have to have even more caution.
Your center of gravity is higher now.
You have a much higher center of gravity as well. I think that's all really important stuff. But now you have Outage in that tanker as well. And that's important to know. I think of like propane or LPG. Liquefied petroleum gas. So you look at LPG, and I like to ask people, all right, what did you have your propane tank filled up to, right? And when they filled it up, they can't filled it up full. It's only going to be filled up to 80%, right? Not getting your money's worth, Billy. Fill that puppy up, right? Why do they only fill them up to 80%? Because it's that outage, and it gets warm out, and that LPG will expand so significantly where it can blow up the tanker or pop the relief valve on it. But
we talked about surge. Well, that's your forward and backward movement. you just have that, still have side surge too. If you're only, say you're half full and go into a curve too fast, it's going to shift all that liquid to one side, potentially causing a rollover.
Absolutely. You take a corner too fast, all that liquid is surging to the side of that tanker, and now it's up a lot higher because it's all moving, and now it's a tidal wave.
Lighter. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, people are interested in it. I think there's some great opportunities in it, right? There's some money to be made in it, no doubt. But just know there's more risks involved too, right?
Yes,
and so you better know what you're doing and have that good quality training on a tanker.
And be a cautious driver.
Yeah. So just know after you pass that DMV test, doesn't mean you're a professional on tankers. The
learning is just beginning.
It really is. I know a couple of guys that haul tankers, and one of the things they do when they're shifting, they shift with the surge. So you go to take off, right? Where's that surge going? The surge is going back, right? And then after the surge comes forward, they'll grab a gear. Let the surge go back. The surge comes forward, they'll grab another gear. And so there's a rhythm there.
Yep. I'm getting into my power band to pull against the surge, pull back. Use it to my advantage to upshift, gain some speed before it tries to slow me down.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So there's stuff to that's important. There's different tips and tricks and everything else. So, good stuff. And then we'll talk about hazmat tankers in a minute here. But you have a lot of hazmat tankers and you have a lot of non-hazmat tankers. It depends on if you're hauling non-hazmat tankers, then obviously you don't need your hazmat endorsement with that. Just your N tanker endorsement will suffice. For hazmat, you're going to need that as well, which we'll talk about here. All right, are we ready for the next one? Lo and behold, guess what it is? Hazmat. It's hazmat. So has materials endorsement. So that's a little bit trickier to get. For the simple fact that you got to take a class on it, an actual course on it. Now there's some great online course options. I know the school puts out a good one, but there's a lot of good ones out there. Or go into an in-person course as well. After you pass that ELDT course with a minimum 80%, then you can go and get your fingerprints done, right? And I think you can get your fingerprints done before that too.
Wasn't sure if they changed that. If you had to pass that first, then your background check and your fingerprints to make you eligible for.
Okay, I got to look into that because I think you can do them simultaneously. Okay. But I do know you can't go down to the DMV to take your hazmat test until the fingerprint check has come back. So what they're checking for,
providing you pass the first test.
Yes. So your hazmat endorsement requires like an FBI background check, get your fingerprints done, and some people say, well, I'm just hauling ammonium nitrate, which is your common fertilizer. Why do I need to do that? Because with that hazmat endorsement, you're allowed to haul really anything on the road. I mean, you're allowed to haul ammunitions, display fireworks, explosives, radioactive material, chemicals, ammonia. I mean, you're allowed to haul some crazy stuff with a hazmat endorsement.
Flammable stuff, poisonous stuff. There's
corrosives, oxidizers. I mean, there's a lot of I don't think people realize there's a lot of crazy hazmat materials out there.
There's a lot on the road every day that people don't realize what they're traveling in their car next to.
Oh yeah, no. Anytime on the road, I'm always picking out the placards, and if I see a placard I'm not familiar with, I'm like, okay, that's not diesel fuel or gasoline or jet fuel. It's like that's a different, an oxidizer. Like, ooh, that looks like fun, or some type of acid, or there's some crazy stuff out there. So yeah, you ever see a tanker with the diamond-shaped placards on the side? What you could do is you could take that UN number and just Google it, and that'll tell you what that is. I'm thinking of like 1993 is diesel fuel or fuel oil, right? You look at that, see 1993. But there's some of them. When I'm on the road, I'm always curious, like, oh, what are they hauling, right? And then you find out it's not so fun. It's like I don't want to be driving around that tanker. No. Not that they're not safe, but it's like, man, harmful chemicals like that. Who knows? You know what I mean? You certainly won't want to get in an accident with something like that. It's like the movie Terminator. Remember that? It was a load of liquid nitrogen, I think. Was that right? Terminator? Liquid nitrogen. It explodes and that's how they get him. You know what I mean? Liquid, and then he comes back to life. You know, but yeah, that would be a hazmat tanker, right? Liquid nitrogen, and that's kind of real, like what would happen there. With everything flash freezing like that.
Speaking of liquid nitrogen, if you notice, if you see one, you'll know what it is if it's hot, because you will see it venting as it's going down the road. Because the heat, it's expanding, and it's got to vent.
It's got to vent it out.
Yep.
That's bizarre. Yeah, so you see that, either stay behind him or get in front of him. You know, you don't want to hang around next to a liquid nitrogen tanker. Absolutely. You know, that's. But there's a lot more of that being transported on our roadways than people realize, and as long as people realize to be safe about it and be extra safe driving around those, because I mean we've all seen those videos of fuel tankers tipping over and bursting into flames. It's like that absolutely can happen. It has happened.
Yes, happens.
Right. You look at people hauling display fireworks, and there is a ignition source somewhere, or things have gotten wet, or, and
it's all happened.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's chemicals out there that will get flammable when wet. They get wet, they burst into flames. So it's like, you got to recognize that. I talked to a student here a little while back, and he was hauling, it's not lithium ion batteries. It's like a cobalt ion battery for like Tesla. And that's hazmat because it's so many batteries, right? And so there's because flammable metals and stuff. So there was a whole process to haul those safely, and just a lot of interesting stuff. But that's why you need an FBI background check, get your fingerprints done to make sure they're qualified to haul this stuff, but also that aren't gonna do anything dumb
to harm others.
To harm others, exactly. So that makes sense. So all right, so you take the course, you pass the course on hazmat materials, you take your background check, right? And that can take. I know, like this last time, I had to renew mine, and I had to redo my fingerprints, and it only took like a week and a half, 2 weeks. It was really quick to come back. But I know I've heard it take up to 6 weeks if you've never had a background check, right? Or
let's touch on that for a second, though. So that's something to think about. If a guy has his hazmat, knows that that's coming up, renew that prior to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of you having a gap.
That's a really good point, because if you wait till the week that it expires, it's going to expire because your background check isn't going to come back. And that's important to know too, is hazmat's one of the, I believe it's the only endorsement. It is the only endorsement that you need to retake the test on it and redo your background check and your fingerprints every time your license renews, which is typically every 4 or 5 years or 6 years.
That's the only endorsement.
Yeah, that's the only one. So, because I thought it interesting that I teach this stuff, and they made me take the test again too, which is fine. But just to make sure, because things update, right? I know, over the last handful of years, they went from NA numbers to UN numbers. And so UN is United Nations numbers, so it's more global as opposed to NA, which is just North America. So they want to be more global with their shipping to make sure there's, everything's the same across the board.
Yep,
right?
And with international commerce and everything.
Exactly, and there's obviously a lot of that going on. So and to make sure things are consistent across the globe, which is interesting. The other thing with hazmat that I think is important to recognize is you're dealing with more dangerous loads, right? So as a driver, you have to be a lot more defensive. You gotta know what you're doing, pay attention to what you're doing. Where an accident with a hazmat could be catastrophic.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Compared to a regular dry van trailer. I mean, it's one of those things, you roll over with a dry van trailer, it's going to suck. Probably going to lose your job still. But, you roll over with a hazmat, you can burst into flames and burn down a bridge. I mean, it could be a horrible situation. So
more training goes into the hazmat also. Stopping at every railroad crossing where a typical CMV does not have to. Different regulations on when you pull in somewhere to get fuel, what you can and can't do versus a normal CMV. That's all stuff you got to be aware of.
Absolutely. Even going through going through tunnels and stuff. Most tunnels, I think of like the Loveland Pass and stuff, where you got to take the pass if you're hauling hazmat. They don't allow you to go through the tunnel.
So you got to be aware of all that. Don't want to get caught
Bridges,
in a situation.
you want to go across the Mackinac Bridge, you got to be escorted to make sure, once again, you don't do anything dumb, right? So, there's a whole other set of regulations when it comes to hazmat. It's not just, get this little endorsement on your license. It's like, there's a lot that goes into it. You have to know what you're doing. And
a lot more awareness for you as a driver.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to be more defensive, because someone else makes a big mistake on the road and you're not really defensive on that. It's like,
turns into a catastrophic event that nobody wants.
Exactly. That's it could be a massive deal to say the least here. All right, well, we're cruising right along here. Let's see here. X. So X endorsement just means, like, that's what I have on my license. That just means you have your tanker and hazmat endorsement. Do you know why they say the X? I don't know. I mean, is it to save some ink on your driver's license? So yeah. So as opposed to having it separately, like H and N on your license, they just put the X. You got X. You got them all.
If we're talking letters, why is the N tanker and T is not?
What's that? Because T is doubles, triples.
Should have been tanker, right?
Yeah, exactly. But somebody with a lot more letters behind their name came up with that. All right, than me. All right, that's all I know.
Just follow the rules.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I do. You know that. But I mean, somebody made up those rules, right? Somebody made that up. I don't know who that person was. It was probably a long time ago. They might not be around anymore, right? But
I'm sure at the time there was reason behind it.
There was rationale. Yep. There was rationale. So, but X just simply means you have your hazmat and your tanker. You can haul hazmat tanker, essentially, which is very common.
Very common.
Well. Like around where we're at, and this is pretty common in my travels, but you see a lot of gasoline being hauled, a lot of diesel fuel being hauled, a lot of LPG, a lot of propane, compressed natural gas. I mean, that's pretty much petroleum products is the hazmat we see around here on a regular basis.
And we've hit a lot about even like hazardous materials stuff with a Class A CDL, but there's Class B CDL that require hazardous materials also.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Take your local air gas truck hauling bottles around. He's going to be
absolutely. So he's hauling, acetylene and other torch fuels.
Yep, your Class B pedal trucks for your propane.
Yeah.
Fuel.
So, and those are good opportunities too.
Yeah, we could be a Class B CDL, but still with that hazardous and tanker endorsement.
Yeah, so you have your hazmat and tanker endorsement, but on a Class B CDL. So that's common as well. Absolutely. So yeah, pretty much any bottle on a straight truck is going to be a B CDL at that point. Yeah. All right. Last but not least, school bus. School bus, hauling the most precious commodity that you can haul, which is, of course, my children, Billy.
So I've been told.
Something that I've never done, nor do I want to, but I will give a shout out to all the school bus drivers out there.
Absolutely.
Thank you for doing what you do, because I certainly, can't stand my own kids sometimes, all right, let alone other people's. So I tell you what.
Absolutely praise school bus drivers.
Yes.
And I hope they're all safe. School's starting up here pretty soon.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody stays safe.
Everyone stays safe. And to get that endorsement on your license, it's important to know how to operate a school bus. But, the fact that you're making so many stops in a day, picking all these kids up. And I was up this morning at 6:00 and it was dark outside. It was dark, like, all of a sudden, it is dark outside at 6 a.m. This is like, I feel like it was the first time. Because every day just gets a little shorter. And so, but sure enough, we're going to, start picking up kids, and most school buses pick up kids in the dark. And so you got to be more attentive, right? You got to watch your surroundings. I think traffic checks are so important to make sure cars are stopping and you have kind of control over that bus.
Yep. Maybe hit on that. Let everybody out there know school's starting soon. Leave home 10 minutes sooner than you normally
Well, yeah,
Normally
because
do-
you're going to get.
Yep, school buses are going to be out there. We need to keep our bus drivers and all them little kids safe every day.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And there was a little like PR, I don't know, pamphlet put out there that school bus lights are the same as traffic lights, right? You see the alternating ambers, the yellows, that means stop. You see the reds and the stop sign, that means absolutely stop.
Yes.
And stay stopped, right? Give those buses adequate distance, a space cushion, right? And some students have to cross the road. Some students are getting off the bus. If it's in the afternoon, probably they're getting off the bus. If it's in the morning, they're getting on the bus. Never pass a bus with its lights on. And just realize that all buses kind of stop at railroad crossings. So, you see that once in a while where people rear end school buses. And, why they stop at that in the middle of the road? Well, it's a railroad crossing, right? They stop at all railroad crossings, and they got to open the door and make sure there's no train coming. People need to recognize that. Yeah. So school's kicking off. So it's important to be, just your four-wheelers out there, be more defensive. But, and like that point that you said is great. Leave 10 minutes early. And that way, if you do get stopped a little bit along the way, it's no big deal.
Slow down, give the school bus some space. Everybody have a safe school year.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Keep my kiddos safe. All right. But that's why they ride the bus, because that is the safest vehicle out on the road is a school bus. Yeah. They sit up high and they got a roll cage and they're safe,
So the bus driver's safer driver than dad is?
Well, I wouldn't. You know what? I'm not going to say yay or nay on that. I would say, we're both safe. All right. But there's definitely more meat on a school bus than there is my Chevy Colorado.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's for sure. So to get that S endorsement, so that is a test at the DMV, written test, but you also have to test in a school bus vehicle as well. You have to do, and in that CDL skills test, yes, the normal pre-trip yard road, but you also have railroad crossings that you have to do, and that's a test in itself, as well as student discharge and pickup. That's another test. So there's a lot that's involved with it. There's a lot of regulations as far as the FMCSRs goes when it comes to hauling kids around, right?
It's a lot different than the other endorsements that we've talked about that have just been a test at the DMV. This involves 40 hours of training.
Skills tests, written tests, knowledge tests. You have to do the full ELDT on school bus. So there's a lot going into it. But I do know for anyone looking to get their S&P endorsements, and typically that's a Class B CDL as well. The majority of schools are hiring right now. They really are. There's massive demand right now for school bus drivers. So reach out to your local bus or truck driving school, you know what I mean? And, pick up those endorsements because there's a lot of good opportunities with that. So, I know I was talking to a mom here. This was like last year, and she had gotten her, Class B with S&P just so she could drive her kids to school on the school bus.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's cool though. So she was like, I'm taking my own kids. So I know I'm safe and in the bus. And so it was a win-win, right? Because she's like, either way, I'm driving my kids to school. Either I'm driving them or on the bus, I'm driving them and everyone else, and I get paid to drive my kids to school. So I thought that's kind of cool.
And I've been hearing there's other options out there. If you don't want to be a full-time bus driver, some of these school districts are looking for people just for haul their football teams, or their travel stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really common too. And I know there's been games that have been canceled because they couldn't find a bus driver to haul the team for football or a wrestling meet or baseball
so you might
meet,
be too busy to be a full-time bus driver. There's options. Call it wherever you're at. Talk to your local school district. There might be an opportunity to make a little money on the side, drive a school bus.
Absolutely. And I know they're always looking for subs as well because people get sick. That's a part of life. So even getting in as a sub here and there to help out. There's definitely a need for it. Definitely a need for it. I would argue that the majority of school districts, wherever you're at, chances are one of them's hiring school bus drivers because there's just a massive demand for school bus drivers.
Absolutely.
I actually thought about it, Billy. You know that, and then I realized I would have to deal with other people's kids and my own kids, that. And so, yeah, exactly. And my kids are always better for other people. I don't know why, but they would be like a bull in a china shop on a school bus if I was driving, that. So, I don't know if I can kick my own kids off the bus, but that's where it would lead to. I just know it. I just know it. Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? Like I said, Billy, short and sweet. All right. I think this was great. If people have any questions on endorsements, or maybe they're unsure about this or that, put them in the chat down below and we can answer them. But I think that was pretty comprehensive, talking about all the different endorsements you can get. At the end of the day, the more endorsements you have, the more opportunities are going to open themselves up. Yeah. I know when Schneider came in here last week, they encouraged all the students to get their tanker and their hazmat endorsement, because they said even though there's very few tankers and hazmat that they haul, if you have them, you get paid more, and they know they can put that load on you if they have one, right? Even if
absolutely.
It's only a handful of times a year. So
makes you a more versatile driver to somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. And the tanker's pretty much becoming more and more required across the board as well. So tanker, definitely get that on, just a little written test at the DMV, but definitely get that on your CDL. I think that's going to go a long ways. Well, always a pleasure, Bill.
All right.
Thanks again for being on the show today.
Absolutely.